My name is Rosie Goldsmith and welcome to my Riveting interview series, conversations with authors from all over the world. My nickname is Rosie the Riveter, and one of my great passions is introducing readers to riveting writers. You may already know The Riveter, our magazine of international writing, as well as our online riveting reviews and riveting reads. They're all dedicated to giving foreign writers in English translation the prominence they deserve, which is exactly what I want to do with this series of riveting audio and video interviews. They're all free via our website, eurolitnetwork.com. Welcome to today's riveting author. Hi everyone, and welcome to today's interview. And I'm going to be interviewing a French translator, a very riveting French translator. She's called Adriana Hunter, and she's translated nearly 90 works of French literature. That's mostly literary fiction, but she's going to tell us a little bit more. We haven't got time to talk about all 90 books, but welcome, Adriana. How are you, and how's lockdown? I know you're at home in Kent and I'm here in Wiltshire. How has lockdown been for you?
Well, it's been very good, thank you. As a translator, I'm used to working from home anyway, so that's been more of the same. And I've been lucky enough to have a steady trickle of work. So yes, it's been good.
Good. Well, it's nice to hear something positive about this very difficult time. But when I say 90 books, I mean 90 books. How long is that for each book? And as far as I can tell, you only started publishing about 20 years ago. This is incredible. This is crazy. You translate in your sleep.
I'm a bit of a workaholic, and people always ask me when I first started doing this, and people said, "Oh, but I mean, how do you discipline yourself to work from home?" And I have the exact opposite problem. I have to discipline myself to stop working. And if I'm ahead of schedule on something, I'll think, oh, I could meet a girlfriend and have lunch, and I could do this, or I could take the dogs to the beach, or I could do more work. It's compulsive, and I'm very spoiled because I really love my job. And obviously there are some books that I enjoy less, but then it's the challenge that's the pleasure.
So when did this addiction to French and to translation start?
Well, the addiction to French and the addiction to translation are slightly separate, but the translation started when I stumbled across a review for a book, a French book, and ordered it, read it, was absolutely bowled over by it, and I wanted more people to read it. And so I had no idea how to go about it. I translated a chunk and sent it round to various publishers. And several months and several rejections later, Philip Gwyn-Jones, who was then at Flamingo, got in touch and said, "Oh, I hope the rights are still available. I love it. I want to run with it." And that was my first translation. It was called La Disparition, The Disappearance, by Geneviève Jurgensen. A really beautiful, beautiful book. And I, touch wood, haven't really stopped working since.
Amazing. Well, before there's lots to ask you about translation, but your addiction to French then is another thing, and that started at a very young age because you were brought up in Switzerland. Is that correct?
Yes, I was an army brat, and my father had a 4-year posting, which is very unusual to be in one place for so long. A 4-year posting in Bern in Switzerland, which is actually a German-speaking city, but my brothers and I were sent to a French school. And apparently when we came home to England, my grandmother said, "You've brought me home foreign grandchildren," because we were more comfortable speaking French than English. You know, little children, really, the language they speak at school is the language they speak. And then I did a degree in French, and it wasn't until doing my degree that I really discovered French literature and just a love and an absolute passion for books.
It's fascinating because I studied French and German, but there's no way I would ever have dreamt of becoming a translator or wanted to be a translator. I love it how that's what you've done, and I've just not done that. You know, it's sort of because what does that say about translation? It says there's something about translators, I think, And I'm a linguist, you're a linguist, but you're a translator. What do you think the difference is?
Interestingly, it was that very first editor, Philip Gwyn Jones, who said something like, you're not a linguist, you're a writer who's got a language. And I took it as a massive compliment. I think it was meant as a massive compliment. And I do feel like a writer. And the only trouble is when I'm writing something beautiful, it's not actually me who's initiated it. But I feel like a writer who's got access to material from somewhere else, if that makes sense.
Oh, absolutely. And I mean, you studied French and drama, and I imagine you can also see it in the way that I do with translation, that you're putting on another costume, you're putting on another character, you're performing another character. It has a similarity, doesn't it? And in fact, I can see through the books that you've chosen to translate and that you've been given to translate that a lot of what you did previously with drama, and you were a publicist and you worked in film and so on, has fed into your translation work.
Yes, I mean, there are masses of different ways of describing translation, but I've got a real passion for the narrative voice. And I always think of translation, people say, could you recognize an Adriana Hunter translation? I said, well, no, because I always think of it as being a character actor. I'm not Kate Blanchett or someone, I'm not somebody really famous. I'm that funny little woman who, wasn't she on Casualty last week? And I swear she was in that film by Guy Ritchie. It's one of those people you never quite know, you can't quite place them because they just morph seamlessly into the voice of the part they're playing. And I really hope that I manage to morph into the voice of the book I'm translating.
Do you find it difficult to be in the background as a translator? You're obviously somebody who enjoys talking, you're quite flamboyant. Do you find it difficult as a translator to take a back seat?
Not at all, not at all. It's part of the pleasure is trying on this different voice. I mean, I do a little bit of acting, a little bit of amdram acting, and it's that thing of not being you, not having to go through the process of being you because you're fully inhabiting being somebody else. And it is a pleasure in itself. I don't know what it says about me, but it's a pleasure.
Let's talk then about your process of translation, because of course this is always the crux question for translators. How do you translate? Can you give us an idea how you approach a book? I mean, you can give us an example of, you've got a small pile, a few of the books you've translated in your room there, but just talk us through your process.
It's really incredibly simple. And sometimes when I listen to the way other people do it, I think, oh, how could that possibly work? I usually will read the whole book first, but sometimes I won't even do that for various different reasons to do with sort of trying to have the same experience as the reader and trying to maintain the freshness. Sometimes I'll feel I need to read the whole book because it's very intricate and there might be a lot of sort of sustained imagery through the book that I need to pick up on and things like that. And then I will start at the beginning and I will work my way through to the end. And I'm not allowed to leave blanks. I'm not allowed to talk to the author. I'm not allowed to do anything. I just have to grit my teeth and work my way through it and flag up areas where I might need to get some help with something. I also am not big on doing lots of drafts. I will work through, depending on how difficult the book is, I'll sit down for, I don't know, an hour and a half and I'll get three or 4 pages done, or if it's really tough, it might be only 1, or it might be 6, it depends what the book's like. And then I'll go away and do something else, clear my head, and come back, read through what I've done, correct it, and then with the sort of impetus of that correction, carry on with the next section. And it works like that all the way through the book. And then I put it away for a month, completely forget about it, print it out and read it through once more. And that is it. That last edit where I read it through once more, I edit it and then I send it off. And I feel so guilty when people tell me, well, on my 5th draft. And also people say they work through it very, very quickly with lots of options for words, big / large / huge / ups, whatever. And I just think, no, you need to choose a word straight away, because if you're messing around with all these different options, you're losing that wonderful flow and rhythm. You're not hearing the sentence. You're not hearing what the author's doing. That's the way it works for me anyway.
So what is the thrill that keeps you going? And I mean, I'm just trying to imagine what it is like to have translated 90 books in 20 years. I mean, have you ever worked out how many hours or days or weeks you've spent on each book?
No, and it varies enormously. When I started out, I had 3 small children. My youngest was born in late '99, so yes, I had a tiny baby and 2 children, and I had to work sort of in term times, so that I was free to be a full-on mummy in the holidays. And then as they got older, more and more books came along, and I mean, I've worked on quite a few really quite short books. The French are very good at pithy little books, which I happen to love. But no, I've never sat down and worked it out, but I don't feel as if I work crazy long hours.
Well, thank goodness the French book industry does produce so many books. I mean, they publish a lot. So there's a lot for you and all the other translators of French. And the fact is, of course, that there are more translations from French into English than any other language, by a long way. And there are a number of star translators from French like you. And I know I'm very lucky to know a few of you very well. I just want to know, are you at all competitive with the other translators from French?
I don't think it's competitive. I mean, I think whenever you meet up with people, it's always a real pleasure, because it's a very solitary pursuit. So it's nice to meet people who understand what you're going through. But there is inevitably competition if you're asked to translate a sample for something. And if you then don't get the job, and there was one particular incident, there was a book I absolutely loved, and I didn't get the job, and then a couple of years later it was sort of featured in Waterstones, masses of copies on a rack at the front of the shop. And it's painful. I don't hate him.
We're narrowing it down here. Answers on a postcard, everyone.
No, I'm sure he did a great job, but I loved the book. It's a bit like, it should have been me watching the bride going down the aisle, or, it should have been my book.
Would you ever want to translate, for instance, the classics? Would you, and is it important to a translator of French that you will end up at one point translating Proust or Flaubert or the others?
I don't know if it's important to translators as a sort of general rule, but it is
to prove yourself. I mean, to prove yourself in quote marks.
Yes, but that's a bit like saying, should, I don't know, Timothy Spall be doing Shakespeare to prove himself? I personally would. I think I would love it. I think I'd really love it. I have translated one book that was written in the late 30s, called Climates of Love, by André Mauroy, and I loved it because what my publisher asked me to do was to make it fresh and up to date. The book had been previously translated, but it was apparently, I didn't look at it, but apparently it was quite plodding and sort of slow and a bit wooden. And so she asked me to make it fresh and accessible, but never anachronistic. And it's just like another layer in the performance. It's putting on that slightly 1930s voice. It was a real pleasure. And the book I'm working on at the moment is set during the First World War. And I'm really concentrating on not being anachronistic. And it's a very beautiful, very short book. and the author appears to have done the same in French. You know, she talks about a baby carriage as opposed to a pram or a stroller or buggy or whatever you might call it now. And so it's all to do, it's almost like a musical ear for the way words are put together by different people from different walks of life, or from a previous era.